Hello, friends, and welcome to my today's lecture. That is the third part of the summary of That Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande. In my last lecture, I had spoken about Deshpande as strongly protesting against the male dominated society and also the man made conventions and rules in the novel. That long silence, it's a first person narrative, and it is actually the protagonist Jaya who unfolds the whole story, ironically symbolizing victory, whereas in real life she's like any other woman who's supposed to lead a very traditional and a passive life. I'd also spoken about Jaya not being allowed to follow such role models like Sita, Savitri, and Draupadi, and these three women who are portrayed or who have been referred to here were mere illusions of the past and had no relevance to the present. And also, I had also spoken about the society in which the male child is preferred more than the female child, because these male child were the permanent members of the family, and they would carry the family name ahead, or they were the inheritors of the family. And I had also mentioned Jaya's anger, instead of finding expression, getting transformed into a long silence, because for Jaya's silence and surrender with the real strength of an Indian woman, and she's not portrayed by Shashi Deshpande as a feminist character in the novel, and so she hovers between submission and assertion. Today I'll be talking about the remaining portion that is there in the summary of the novel, That Long Silence. Now, I talked about the three distinct phases of feminism in yesterday's lecture, and among these three distinct phases, the early means imitation of the role models, and the limit of whose Jaya had already crossed. The first phase of the imitation was followed by anger and protest. But the novel focuses on the second phase in the life of Jaya, and on looking back, we see that Jaya, she hardly feels any sense of nostalgia or yearning for the past. Where is there? What is there within her actually is the suppressed anger, which could burst out any time. And the last phase of feminism, that of articulation and assertion, they are just hinted at by the narrator as the future possibilities for Jaya. The whole novel acts as a preparation for the articulation which will break Jaya's that long silence. We are given enough clues that Jaya will break her passivity or passiveness, and even Jaya asserts, in quotes from the novel, that we'll have to erase the silence between us, but the actual drama is postponed to the future, unquote. Now, once Having realized her position, we all know that Jaya would not accept the earlier existing image of two or a pair of bullocks yoked together, very explicitly signaling a loveless couple. She comes to the realization that life can always be made possible in whatever conditions it may be. Now, Jaya, who was earlier the impulsive woman, transforms into a matured woman, and once she realizes this, all the shadows that befall between the husband and wife, they at once tend to disappear. Now, Shashi Deshpande, she also tries to establish this fact that it is not just the patriarchal setup that is responsible for a woman's condition in the society, but the responsibility also lies within the victim to say no, to raise a voice, and to achieve the goal. Now, the novel, That Long Silence, could also be seen as tracing the growth of the protagonist from a state of weakness, feeling of failure, and failure to that of relaxation. Now, this is also done by Jaya through self assessment and self criticism. Now, in that sense, Shashi Deshpande's novel could also be viewed as an expression of the silence of modern Indian wife. Though we see that many women writers, they tried their hands or they experimented at expressing this long silence that turned the woman into non-entities, but they could only provide the psychological depths to their characters. These writers, they neither created unreal sentimental romances, nor they finally succumbed to the temptation of mouthing the feminist ideology. But Shashi's success lies in her representation of real life experience. She realistically depicts the inner conflicts of Jaya and her quest for self identity. Now, Jaya represents half the human race, as we could say, and the novel sustains on this credibility from the fact that Jaya is a convent educated English speaking lady who has a literary taste. And it also portrays the conflict raging between the narrator's split self, the writer and the housewife. Now, Shashi also highlights their inferior position, that is, of women, and the subsequent degradation in the male dominated society. Her women protagonists are victims of the prevalent gross gender discrimination, first as a daughter and later on as wives. So we see that though Shashi Deshpande has a very small volume of literary works to her credit, but her little works have drawn great critical attention and acclaim for her sensitive and realistic representation of the Indian middle class women, working women especially. That's all about the summary of That Long Silence by Shashi Deshpande. I would be coming up with more lectures of mine. Till then, goodbye and thank you, friends.